My name is Mr. Iorio. I'm one of the music teachers for the Visalia School District. And this is a little section on the clarinet. The clarinet is one of the woodwind instruments that you're able to start in the 5th grade. Before any instrument you play, clarinet or any of the other band instruments we have, one thing I would like to recommend is that you wash your hands, you brush your teeth, rinse out your mouth, because you want to keep the instrument as clean as you can, because you're going to be sticking it in your mouth many times. So unless you want a bunch of gunk growing in your clarinet, it's a good idea to try to keep your instrument as clean as you can. That means every time you're through playing, you would want to wash out your instrument, especially the mouthpiece, the part you put in your mouth and you blow into. Let's start by showing you what the clarinet looks like and how we put it together. Now, the clarinets come basically in 5 pieces. The 2 main pieces of the clarinet that have all the keys we call the upper body and the lower body. And you will notice that there are corks on the ends of the clarinets, and that's how you put the clarinet together. The cork actually acts as something that lets you carefully put these 2 joints of the clarinet together. Now, the 2 main body parts, there's one most important part I want to show you, and that's where right here there's a part from the lower joint that has to match with the part from the upper joint. And in order to get those 2 parts to fit together, you want to put your left hand on the upper joint and turn to where those 2 parts line up, but make sure the lower joint piece is on the bottom, the upper joint piece is on the top. So that when I press the bottom key here, it makes keys on the top also work together. It's right here. That's the most important part on putting the clarinet together. Let me show you again. It's this piece on the bottom. If you can see that moving up and down. Goes on the bottom of this piece. Again, you see something moving up and down. So that when you put it together, the lower part is underneath. And they line up together, and that means your 2 main parts of the clarinet are lined up properly. Everything else is going to be a lot easier. That's the key part to put together. At the bottom of the clarinet, we have what's called the bell. It looks like a bell. And that goes on the bottom of the clarinet, again on the cork. And when you first get your clarinet, the corks are going to probably be dry. And when you get your clarinet, you should have something that's called cork grease that you actually rub on the corks. That makes it a lot easier to put the clarinet together. Now I'm going to use some cork grease on this upper joint right here. And they come in tubes, and kids usually just dab on a little bit. And then what I recommend is that you actually use your fingers and rub the grease into the cork. It does a much better job, and that way you could get the grease all the way around the cork, so that when you put the next piece on, this is called the barrel towards the upper part, that grease lets you slip it on pretty easily. So you want to rub the cork grease in with your fingers, put the next piece together. And the cork grease comes in this little tube. You should always have cork grease all the time. Then the 5th part of the clarinet is the mouthpiece. And the mouthpiece is the part that you're going to put in your mouth and blow into. And there's a certain thing that goes on the mouthpiece that lets you get the sound. But first, let's put the mouthpiece on. It's at the very top of the clarinet, so that the clarinet looks like this when it's all put together. The 2 main parts, the bell, the barrel, and the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece, there's a little metal piece called the ligature that goes over the top of the mouthpiece. And that ligature holds the reed. The reed is a little piece of wood, a little piece of bamboo that is shaved real thin on the top end. And you have to wet the reed. And when I say wet it, you put it in your mouth. You lay both the top and the bottom part of the reed on your mouth, on your tongue. Get it good and wet. And then you want to put the reed on the mouthpiece. And you slide it down, and the ligature, that little piece of metal, holds the reed onto the mouthpiece. Now we need a real good close-up of this. I think this is going to have to be done in person as far as exactly where to set the reed. This is what the reed looks like when it's lined up. This is the top of the mouthpiece. The flat side where the hole is on the mouthpiece is where the reed goes over. Okay? Now, you don't want the reed too high or too low. And when you get your clarinet and you first put the reed on in school, make sure you have your teacher help you see where that reed is so they can show you exactly how the reed fits on the mouthpiece. Very important part. That reed has to vibrate. You're going to blow air into this end of the clarinet, into the mouthpiece, and that reed actually vibrates back and forth. It makes the air vibrate through the clarinet, and that's what makes the sound. If you don't have the reed on the clarinet, you will not get a sound. You'll just get air running through. So that reed's very important. And reeds break very easily because it's a very, very thin piece of wood. So you have to treat them carefully, be careful with them. We always recommend you have at least 3 reeds, the one you're playing and 2 extra ones, because you're going to find that you will accidentally break the reed once in a while and you will need to replace it. And sometimes after you use the reed for a certain length of time, it does wear out and you will need to replace it. So we always recommend you have at least 3 reeds. Stop for a second. Let's take the clarinet apart, put it back in the case, and then we'll all put it back together again. I like to take it apart from the bottom up, and when you take the clarinet, the different sections of it apart, don't try to pull it apart, twist it so that it comes off a lot easier if you twist it. And I don't like to hold it up here and at the bottom to try to separate it when I want to separate it in the middle. I like to hold it close to the parts of the clarinets that are going to be separating. And again, you just twist it apart, twist and pull at the same time. Again, twist and pull. Then you should I like to take the reed off. And then you can separate the barrel and the mouthpiece without hurting the reed. And put it back in. Each case, there's a slot for each particular section of the clarinet. Okay? Now, let's all together see if we can put the clarinet and build the clarinet and put it back together. I like to start with the 2 main pieces, the 2 large pieces. Remember, there's the upper and the lower sections. You hold it close to where you're going to be putting it together. You use a twisting motion. Make sure the bottom arm sits underneath the upper arm, and you line those 2 up, twist and push it together, and the clarinet is lined up. All the keys are lined up the way they should be. Then I like to put on the bell, the bottom piece, twist and push it together. The barrel, twist and push it together. And at any time, if it's at all hard, put on some cork grease. And then the mouthpiece, right at the top. Twist, push it together. The ligature that holds the reed onto the mouthpiece. And the reed. Remember, you need to wet the reed. If you don't wet the reed has a tendency to squeak. That's why you want the reed to be moist when you start playing. Then you very carefully slide the reed over the opening of the mouthpiece. Tighten up the ligature that holds the reed on to the mouthpiece. And your clarinet should be put together. Okay, we now have the clarinet put together. Now our goal is to see if we get our first sound on the instrument. Before we do that, we want to make sure we understand how important it is to sit properly. And let's start with the proper sitting position and posture on playing an instrument. This actually is the same for any instrument you want to blow. I'm using Jonathan here as our student. Jonathan, would you sit up towards the front of the chair? Don't rest your back. Okay. Now, if you see, Jonathan's back is not touching the back of the chair. When you play an instrument, any instrument you blow into, your back should not be touching the back of the chair. You need to sit up towards the front of the chair. Feet should be squarely on the floor. And you put your right hand thumb on, I need to get in here, on the hook that's on the back of the clarinet. Would you, okay. And not towards inside of your hand, but up towards the end of the thumb more. That's where you actually hold the clarinet. You let the clarinet rest on your right thumb. Your left thumb, you want to cover up the hole. There's one hole on the back end of your clarinet. You want to rest your left thumb on that hole and cover that hole up. And you want to take your first finger of your left hand and cover up the first hole on the top front of the clarinet. So you have your right thumb, your left thumb, and your first finger of your left hand. That will help you hold the clarinet. You want to put the mouthpiece, let me go back a second. You want to curl your bottom lip over your bottom teeth. Did you do that, Jonathan? Open your mouth and see if they can see you do that. You want to rest the clarinet mouthpiece, the reed, on top of your lower lip. So you're actually putting it inside your mouth, resting the reed on your lower lip. Your top teeth rest on top of the mouthpiece. You actually put your teeth on top of the mouthpiece. You don't want to bite down real hard, but you want to make the muscles around your mouth fairly tight. And then with our fingers in the positions we talked about, your left thumb and first finger on those two holes, you want to blow air through your clarinet. And that's the first note that clarinet players play, and it's the first note you are taught in your book. The book we use for Visalia is called Standard of Excellence. And the first note is called the E note. And it is on the bottom line of the musical staff. And that's the first note. Would you play it again, Jonathan? Okay, a quick review. He's sitting up straight, feet are flat on the floor. His back is not against the back of the chair. His right thumb is on the hook that's holding the weight of the clarinet. His left thumb is covering up the hole on the back of the clarinet, and his first finger covers up the first hole. His bottom lip is curled on top of his bottom teeth. The reed is resting on his bottom lip. His top teeth are on the top of the mouthpiece. And you have about a ½ inch of the mouthpiece inside your mouth. And then you don't let any air leak out the sides, but you don't bite down too hard. And you blow air through the clarinet. Would you do it again, Jonathan? And that's the E note. Longer. Thank you. That's the first note we learn. And it's so easy, I'm going to show you the next 2 notes we learn. You do exactly the same thing, except now you just add your middle finger of your left hand and cover up the next hole down. That's called the D note. Go back and play the E note. 1 note lower is the D. Play the D note. And the 3rd note we learn is called the C note, and you add your next finger to cover up the 3rd hole. Now play all 3 of those notes, Jonathan. E, D, C. Slower. E, D, C. And that's the first 3 notes we learn on the clarinet. Now, since we have played our first notes on the clarinet, we want to take it apart again, put it in its case, and I will show you the proper cleaning procedures after you are through playing. Remember, I like to take the clarinet apart starting at the bottom using a twisting, pulling motion and finding the proper section in the case to put the clarinet. Again, separating the 2 center pieces of the clarinet, twist it apart. Take the reed off, and that's so that you don't break the reed. Being careful of it, it's very thin. And separating the mouthpiece. Now, when you get your clarinet, everyone should have what's called a cleaning swab with it. And the cleaning swab is what you clean the inside of your clarinet with. You actually just run it through each section and just pull it through one time. What you want to do is collect any excess moisture that's inside your instrument. Helps dry it out. The mouthpiece. What I also recommend for the mouthpiece is every couple weeks, take some mouthwash. Keep your mouthpiece clean, because I've actually seen mouthpieces with mold growing in them. Kids don't keep it clean, and you don't want to put a mouthpiece in your mouth with mold growing in it. If the swab ever gets caught, bring it to your music teacher. Don't try to force something where you might do any damage to the clarinet. In fact, if you think there's anything wrong with your instrument, always bring it to your music teacher to let them take a look at it first. Sometimes it's just a very minor thing that can be fixed right there on the spot. Or if it's something that takes more work, then your teacher can recommend where you need to take it to get it fixed. Okay? And make sure the different pieces of the clarinet go back into the case. Each case has certain sections for each particular part of the clarinet.